Hey guys, Joe here from 3.51, and today we have Seth with his Arceus Duraludon Top Man. Congratulations, first off.
Thank you.
So let's just jump right into the deck profile, and I'm gonna get your take on a couple things right after.
Alright, so there's 4 Arceus V. It's kind of the backbone. It's your accelerator, not your main attacker in this list, though. And then obviously you have the 2 V stars. Really good at accelerating. That's really all you need it for. And you accelerate, Starbirth, and then you kind of throw the other ones away. And then, of course, Duraludon. You want the hard coat one, but a lot of people can't find them. And the dragon one, it's like, it's okay. The hard coat actually does matter a lot more than you would think. It comes up a lot. But you don't always need it thanks to some of the new cards. You don't even need a V. But you got 3 VMAX. The fact that the format's full of Lugias and Regis and all that kind of stuff that has mostly, if not all, special energy is kind of big. The fact that they can't deal damage to it, or with some of the extra cards, they can't affect it at all. But it's pretty important. It's got 330, which is pretty high. It's very beefy. It does 220, but it has the shred type of text where it doesn't. The damage is not affected by anything. So it goes through Miltanks. It goes through, Parasols. It goes through just about everything. Yeah, that card's pretty nuts. And then somewhat of my tech, but there's a lot of Mew. Drapion V is pretty big. It also, very interestingly, is the Mirror Breaker. Duraludon VMAX has Single Strike, which is pretty big in that matchup. But there's not a lot of mirrors around here. There's maybe 1 or 2 people that play it besides me. So it's obviously the best RC deck, but we'll see where it goes from here.
I've been looking for this card. This is the first time I'm actually seeing it in person.
The Galarian Gallery?
Yeah, this thing is sick, bro.
They're very nice. They're super cool.
I just had to appreciate it for a second.
Yeah. And then the new tech, Mustard was kind of clunky. It really didn't work that often, and when it did, it really never mattered. Okay. So you just have probably the craziest card that this deck could have asked for.
Wow.
Radiant Eternatus, especially on the play, going first, it's pretty huge because you're not attacking anyway. But even on the draw, it's even going second, it doesn't actually matter that much because you're not really spreading anything out with Trinity Nova or Charge until until you have Duraludon or something else down. And the fact that this just grabs, it can be grabbed off Quick Ball, Ultra Ball. You have so many ways to find it. If you don't open it in your hand, obviously there are some problems with it. It can be prized, which is pretty obvious. It doesn't, you don't have access to it there, and if you start it, it feels really bad. But yeah, that card is pretty insane. It turns your control deck into having this aggro plan where you can just dump down these 2 Duraludons and there's nothing they can do about it. So yeah, it's lights out in a lot of situations. You don't have access to Power Beam, but besides that, it's pretty insane. And that's it for the attackers and everything else there. There's not too much there. There's not that many. So this deck does mull a fair amount because of it, seeing as you can only start the Arceus, the Duraludon Vs, the Drapion V, or the Eternatus. It actually mulls a decent amount, but not too much today. And then the items, Big Parasol is a pretty hard lock with Duraludon VMAX. Being able to just put your Lugia opponent out of the game where their Evil Tail doesn't work. Things like poison don't work. It just shuts off a ton of stuff, and it's pretty impactful. But it's rotating soon, as is a lot of this deck, so this is one of the last hurrahs with it. But it's the card's really impactful. It really matters, and if it doesn't, you can just pitch it away with Ultra Ball or something else like that. You have Escape Rope, kind of your switch kind of card. It's something that you'll get off Starbirth a little bit with Double Turbo or something like that. It more often than not is one of the cards you think about getting with Starbirth, but it's pretty impactful. And switching your opponent's bench, because you have Boss's Orders, this doesn't actually matter that much. But it's just a glorified switch at the end of the day. But the card's like okay. It's really good in certain situations, but sometimes there's just too much unpredictability about it. Evo Incense. You're like 9 times out of 10 you're getting a Arceus V-Star with this, and then just star birthing into whatever. You usually just grab a Arceus V-Star and then star birth into whatever you need.
Great combo piece.
It's insane. It's very insane. The fact that it represents so many different cards is also pretty crazy. Hyper Potion. The fact that you can remove a Double Turbo to do this is pretty insane. And the fact that it heals 120 against the more aggressive decks that are more aggressive than this, it's pretty impactful. Or late game can just swing a race to see who's going to end up getting the, it helps in the knockout race in the late game. 3 Pokegears, just more consistency, just to find the pieces you need to assemble whatever it is, whether it's, you have a decent amount of supporters that you want at different positions. So having access to all of them in one, and the fact that it shuffles, so if you get Marnied, you can put those cards back in your deck, is pretty big too. 3 Quick Ball. There's not enough basics to warrant 4, but the card's pretty good at, the fact that with this and Ultra Ball you have 7 ways to find Radiant Eternatus on turn 1 is pretty crucial. And it helps if you have the Radiant Eternatus in your deck. It's not in your prize. This card's really impactful. Switch, just pretty classic. Yeah, it's Switch. Same with Ultra Ball, pretty classic. Doesn't do it gets also your Arceus V-Stars and stuff like that, where Quick Ball doesn't. But yeah, those are the items. Supporters, there's Avery. This card's really good against a lot of things, but I mean, at the very worst, it draws you 3 cards. But it's really good against like the decks that go very wide. Reggie's, it's a crucial piece. You can snag things out of Mew, out of Eternatus, out of all kinds of different decks. At the worst, it's a draw 3, which is pretty impactful still. You got 3 Boss's Orders. Just helping you set up knockouts is pretty big. And even like getting neutralizing gas or something that cares about being in the active out of the active is pretty impactful. We'll never get Guzma back in standard, but this is the next best thing. 4 Culver's Experiments. The Lost Zone doesn't actually matter here. It's just a look at the top 5, grab 3, and ditch 2. A lot of times after you start birth, you're just gonna ditch Arceus or any more Arceus that you find. So that card's, it's just a draw engine. 4 Marnies as draw and disruption, especially against your control opponents or something like that. Like, it's definitely a card that has risk to it, but also has a ton of reward once you understand when you need it and when you don't. But that card's, it's rotating soon also, but right now this card's really, really good. The fact that you get 5 cards off of it is pretty good. The fact that with it and Colress Experiment, you see both of them, you have 8 cards that see 5 at a time. These you just don't get to pick. And then there's one Professor's Research. It's a classic. Just discard your hand, draw 7. That card's
You said
really
no
good.
mustard because you're not a
No
fan
mustard.
of it. No
We had
spicy
mustard.
brown mustard.
No, we had mustard, but then Radiant Eternatus got printed, and that card's just infinitely better. It gets 2 things. You don't have to whittle your hand down, and then you can do it turn 1 also on the play. So that card's huge.
Because I was thinking, I was like, he plays a 2-3 lineup. I was like, he's playing mustard, right? And then I'm like, in my head, I'm like, wait, there's got to be something else that brings out the 3rd
It used to be
VMAX. And I was like, oh,
mustard.
to turn this in a 1-1 lineup. So
Yeah,
it
used to be
makes
mustard.
sense.
There's 3 stadiums. Crystal Cave. It's a healing piece, but also having 3 stadiums, it's just this deck really really doesn't like getting Path to the Peak. So when that happens, you can just get rid of it with this. But it does heal your Duraludons and your Radiant Eternatus if you really needed to. But it helps with the knockout race a lot. Temple of Sinnoh, just another huge lockout piece against all kinds of decks, but mostly like Lugia and the Reggie's deck. So that card's pretty insane. And then there's Training Court, just classic. That card's always good. Again, another card that is very risky with your opponent getting to do it too, but sometimes you need it. And against like Lugia or Reggie's or something like that, you just don't care because they're not going to use it. So that card's pretty insane.
Great for fighting energies retrieval too.
Yeah, because there's only 3. 4 double turbos. Every Arceus deck should be playing 4 double turbos. The card's just way too good not to play. The fact that it sets up Trinity Charge by itself is pretty nuts. And
Pretty crazy.
yeah, and the fact that I mean the 20 less doesn't actually really matter that much. So I mean most things aren't at 200. They're either at 180 like Crobat or 220 like Arceus. So the dealing 200 doesn't matter regardless. And then there's 3 fighting energies, just because you really need them. You usually, with the Arceus abilities, you're like Trinity Charge or Trinity Nova, you're going to grab one of these, and then 2 metal, just to set up your Duraludons. Because otherwise, Duraludon's kind of slow to set up without Arceus. So it definitely helps a lot having more basics. You also don't get got by like any of the special energy hate, like the Temple of Sinnoh. Temple of Sinnoh's everywhere right now. And then there's 6 metal to round out the energies.
Shiny.
Yeah, we're only missing 1, but I don't know. I'm probably not going to play this deck post-rotation. We already have a couple things lined up, so it's just it's not that big of a concern anymore to get them all foil. But these are these you have to be less cautious with than the fighting, because there's twice as many of these. But you still have to be careful and manage resources effectively, so you don't accidentally throw something away that you can't get back. Because once the training court's gone, there's no way to get anything back.
Is there any card you feel like underperformed this tournament?
This tournament,
Or in general, you feel like a card that just hasn't been performing well?
it's not that Hyper Potion doesn't perform well, it's that you just never really need it. It doesn't come up that much. You usually just either get beat in the long game, or you just run them over quickly, or you lose a quick game, or you run them over in the late game. Like, it doesn't come up that much, but when it does, it's pretty effective. It's a pretty key piece when you need it. But like Parasol, it's great when you need it, but when you don't, it just kind of sits there. Yeah, that card's... And Drapion didn't really come up that much today. I mean, it's like your last resource attacker.
All right. And what advice do you have for anyone who's thinking about playing Arceus Duraludon, or even thinking about doing Arceus Duraludon in the future?
In the future, don't do it. I don't think it's going to be good post-rotation. A lot of this deck's power comes from the fact that it can just snipe the meta really effectively, and with Lugia being everywhere, you have certain hate pieces like Temple of Sinnoh for it and Big Parasol, but maybe right now it's in a really good spot, but post-rotation, I would wait until the meta settles and then build it according to that meta.
All right. Do you have any shout-outs, anything you want to say at the last part?
Just my team for getting us all here and not killing me on the way over. I know it's difficult sometimes. Yeah, Guilt Leaf Games for, again, the same thing, really. Thanks to all those guys.
All right, man. Thank you, and again, congratulations.
Thank you very much.